What a whirlwind life has been lately. I was going to get on here last week and I was in Sacramento visiting my family and got bit by a dog and it just kind of derailed me. And I was like, okay, this must be part of my eclipse energy. So I'm on here to tell a story and to kind of go through this new moon in Aries tomorrow through this story and just talking about some of the themes and what I've been seeing, but really how the impact has woven itself through my life. And I find that I teach really well through story. And so if you're new to me, my name's Donnell Davis, and I'm a channel and a healer and a transformational mentor who specializes in helping my clients heal forward so they can become their future self now. And I was at first thinking through this eclipse, season when it was the full moon Virgo eclipse. I was already feeling sick. Virgo is the sign of the body, it's the sign of our overall health, how we're showing up day to day. And I had been fighting something for a while. And so I was already in this kind of mode of like taking care of my health, getting some blood work, just getting back on track with all my stuff and just feeling like, okay. And I had a trip planned to go to see my family. And if you know anything about what we're closing out tomorrow, it's been a 2-year cycle that began in April 2023 in with Aries, new moon, and it's wrapping up tomorrow and it's finality. And you may ask, what exactly is wrapping up? Well, it's where the nodes were. It's the theme, it's the lesson, it's the big chapter that your soul came to learn through the energetics of the cosmos. And that theme was all about relationships. And it was about having Aries in the North Node, which is I, and then having Libra in the South Node, which is we. And I really believe, and I see it so much. I do so much complex relationship healings and channelings and all this kind of stuff. And it really is challenging to have amazing, incredible relationships if you don't have a rooted and firm relationship with yourself. It's just the truth. So much of what I do and specialize in nowadays is helping my clients really see what they've created in their lives because they have these unhealed parts. And we always are going to have something that could use tending to, right? But a lot of times you might have these patterns and these coping mechanisms that have been there since your childhood that you've been operating from that are creating this life that isn't what you really want it to be. And so here comes the astrology, the energetic dynamics to kind of shake things up and say, hey, Libra at its shadow frequency could be people pleasing, over diplomacy, like worrying so much about the other person. I just had somebody the other day say to me in a reading, like, I'm so worried how this is going to impact the other person. And I said, that is their energy, of course, have empathy, but when we make decisions that are rooted in for ourselves, you can't overly worry about how that's going to affect somebody else because it's too much, right? So it's having empathy, but it's also being able to step into sovereignty. So Libra at its shadow is enmeshment, codependency at times in relationships at its highest. It's diplomacy, it's connection, it's interdependence, it's all these beautiful things, right? And so over these last couple of years, we had an opportunity to really, really clear and let go of relational patterns that don't serve us and step into what is the higher octave for what's available to us when we're in relationship with ourselves. And whether you think that's selfish or you are one of those people that's always focusing on everybody else and then you come last, even that's a coping mechanism and a pattern, that martyr. So really we've been given an opportunity to see ourselves in new ways and really focus in on these patterns that have probably energetically weighed you down and to some degree created things in your life that maybe weren't moving in the direction that you wanted. So the nodal changes, right? And the eclipses, they come in and they shake things up. And so with Aries new moon tomorrow, we're stepping into a whole new identity because if you've done the work the last 2 years, you recognize, okay, I had to let some things go. And where was I playing small? Where was I still giving away my power for other people or whatever your storyline? So really, really, really think about how have you changed since April of 2023 when it comes to your relationships, when it comes to you, your self-confidence, your self-worth, how you're willing to stand up for what you believe in, how you're willing to go for what you want. These are very, very great questions to contemplate and ponder so that you think about your growth trajectory of what's been happening. And there's nothing that really shows us how much we've grown and healed than real life. And I had an opportunity last week. I was going home to, like I said, to Sacramento to go see my family. I hadn't been home in over a year. And I know being an Aries rising that I have changed so much in these last couple of years. I mean, it's insane. I had a huge court case. I moved. All these things have happened. I really have followed my heart. I really trusted me. And yet, being in such a beautiful partnership here with my fiance in Boise, I've noticed like the places where I'm still kind of like overly worried about his feelings and still kind of that subtle low levels of codependent. I'm not codependent anymore, but like these little kind of energies. And that is part of the process of healing and coming more into our own is that we're never going to be these perfect beings. There's no such thing. And if you're really with the right partner, they are going sometimes to they're going to trigger you. They're going to bring up your stuff, and that's the beauty of that is it's an opportunity to grow, right? Because why go through all of this beautiful work that we're doing with ourselves if not to share? So back to Sacramento, going home, and there's something about being someone who does a lot of work on themselves. You become kind of like this mirror. And I am that sometimes in my family. I have set off a lot of domino reactions from some of the things that I've done in my life. When I left my former, then my sister wound up leaving her husband a year later, then my dad and my mom got divorced a year later. It's like you sometimes think that you're not changing the family constellation because you're not in direct contact saying, hey, this is the work I've done, or this is what's happened. But really what's happening is when you become the embodiment of your truth, you are this exchange of energy with everybody that's in your constellation, and they feel that, and there's reverberations to it. It doesn't mean that they're going to always take action and do things the way that you might deem to see it, but it's that you're creating a permission slip for everybody else. And so that has been part of what I've seen in my family is I kind of go first, and I'm not afraid to do the thing that might be uncomfortable. And so I had opportunities because every family, right, has a little bit of, dysfunctional energy. And I've come to really understand and believe that, there's so many people that like reject their family members because they're so toxic, there's awful. And there is a place for that. If you have a horrible, abusive person or somebody's like a full-blown addict and they don't want to change or whatever, I get it. But if you're just having a hard time because you're still looking at your parents and thinking that they didn't give you what you needed or wanted in your childhood, and you have this unconscious expectation that they need to show up and give that to you. Otherwise, you're withholding or you can't fully be in flow or love them or accept them for who they are, then you're limited and trapped in your past. And that's the truth. And I see a lot of people play this thing out over and over again in their relationships as well. It's not just, it's like mommy and daddy didn't give me this, and therefore I'm a victim of this to some degree. And so therefore I'm going to show up and they don't realize they're doing this, but unconsciously their wounding is like, hey, I need this from you because I didn't get this in my childhood. And the whole game, right, about healing is that we have to give ourselves what we didn't receive. You have to be your own mom and dad and reparent your own inner child. And I've been doing this, and I've had many, many opportunities for healing within my family. and I'm not going to go into all of it, but to the point that I remember in 2017, I had been in a relationship with my former, and I had been cheated on him, and I was trying to decide if I was gonna like if I should be in the relationship or not, that I should, because I was like trying to like work through it, which I wound up doing for 4 years actually, because I heard a message from Spirit say to me, you're going to do the work with him or without him. And I had two little, babies, basically under two. And so, anyways, that's a whole nother story. But I was telling my mom when I was in Sacramento, I said, when I went to I sat with plant medicine, ayahuasca back in 2017, and I was going to ask this deeper question of like, am I doing the right thing in my relationship by like giving this another chance? And I remember so clearly that the spirit of the medicine was saying to me, you can't even touch that until you start to repair your ancestral lineage and the shame and the things that you've received from your mother. And it's taken me years to really understand what that meant, because I was like, wait a second. I'm trying to figure something out in real time, and you're taking me back to this. Well, when you are parented by somebody who's had a lot of, whether it's sexual assault or physical trauma, and they're going to parent you to the best that they can from their wounding, if they haven't done the work. And I realized, as I was speaking to my mom this last trip, I was just telling her, I said, so much of my life has been trying to unpack and uncover these ways, these like subtle ways that I am not fully showing up in my life. And so I was telling her the story about the ayahuasca ceremony, and she was really curious about it. And she's like, so you weren't able to figure out that until you worked on the stuff with me? And I said, well, it wasn't directly that you were trying to put anything on me. It's just that it was carried down through our lineage. And until I healed that within myself, the shame and the hurt and the pain and all these things, I couldn't even see through a clear lens. So much of the work, you guys, that we do when it comes to our family constellation, it doesn't take immediate effect. That I just want to say that. And sometimes it doesn't always make sense. But through that work, I was able to fully see clearly years later where I was in my own wounding, and I was able to leave, and I was able to start a new life and all these things, right? But when I was sitting with my mom, I realized these patterns that are theirs that get kind of insidiously passed down without even effort sometimes, right? It's not that they're trying to do it. They really create opportunities for us to heal. It's karma. And so when I was home, I was able to have this like really like luscious, rich conversation with my mom about how some of the stuff that I released from her and to reparent for myself wasn't just like what happened in my early childhood. It was just what I was brought up in. And so you may find when you're working on yourself, when you're working on your relationship to the way that you're showing up in your life, you have blind spots. And some of it is because you were raised a certain way. And when you start to uncover that, and then you start to come into the clarity of who you are and what your truth is, then you can make decisions based from that vantage point, which is why I was able, that's why the medicine said to me, do this work first. And when you release this, you're going to come into your own. And then as you come into your own, you're going to build a relationship with yourself. And it's going to be really, the most profound work you ever do. And all these years later, especially in these last couple of years, I've taken so many leaps of faith and done so much because I believed I set that foundation of work in myself. So I got to go home, and I got to really see through such beautiful, rich conversation how much I've shifted and changed with my family. And I realized too that with our parents, if you're still looking, right? If you're still looking for some sort of validation or them to give you something, that you're missing the opportunity in the present moment to be with them, to really just understand and be with them of who they are right now. And I think that happens in family constellations. But I had this moment that was really telling. And the reason I was able to see everything in a different way than maybe I was before is because I've really slowed down in my life and I really am a listener. I love to talk, I love to do videos, but when it comes to my life, like I'm realizing that less is more. I don't always have to be the one talking, I don't always have to be the one explaining something unless I'm in this format. And so, anyways, I was at a breakfast with my sister and my real dad. And there was a moment where my sister and I were not getting along. There's a story into itself. And we were having this moment where she was being quiet and I was wondering why she was giving me the silent treatment. And it was frustrating me. And I remember saying to her, "Hey, I know that you might be angry about this thing that happened before we got to the restaurant, but could we could we talk about it? Could we just, or at least move past it? Because I only see you once a year here, and our real dad, we don't get to spend time with him. I hadn't seen him in it's like over a year." And I said, "So can we just put things aside, or do you want to talk about it and just clear the air?" And she wasn't ready to do that, and that was fine. But it was really interesting because my real dad said to me, he was like, "Hey, stop poking your sister." And I remember thinking to myself, at first I felt like bad. I felt like a little bit of shame. I was like, oh yeah, because I do have in my personal life, I am a very direct person. And I remember thinking to myself, like, wait a second, am I poking by like trying to clear the air and really be a good communicator? And in that instant, I saw all the ways I've avoided truth and reality and avoided discomfort because my father, who I was born from, that's his MO still to this day. He like literally couldn't handle the discomfort of me asking my sister a question, and he called it poking and wanted me to stop because he just wanted to pretend like everything was okay and go back to how awkward and dysfunctional the conversation was to begin with. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is really fascinating. And I remember saying to both of them, I'm like, I'm sorry. I don't pretend that nothing's wrong when something's clearly wrong. I don't need to like bypass this. We're all uncomfortable. I'm just the only one voicing it. And it was so interesting to me because before I would have thought, oh, I've done something wrong. He's actually said that to me years ago. I remember him saying the very similar thing to me. And maybe at that time it was applicable, but this time it wasn't. And I was in my clarity and I was in my knowing, and I was like, whoa. So this is how I learned partly to be uncomfortable with other people's emotions and feelings and like, let's just get on with it. Like, let's just make everybody okay and comfortable and let's just pretend everything's all right. And I'm like, I'm not going to do that anymore. That's not my MO. And so it was really incredible for me to witness that in that really short interaction. And it allowed me to see how far I've come in my growth and development within myself because I have boundaries and I want to be healthy and I want to talk about things and I want to have clarity. And I'm okay being uncomfortable. I'm okay if somebody isn't happy with me. It's like, okay, let's talk about it. And my sister was having, I love my sister to death. She's one of my best friends in this world, but she was projecting some things onto me. And we wound up talking about it. We wound up having a wildly clearing, amazing, reparative conversation. But the whole reason I share all this with you, because this is very much the energy. I mean, Mars is in Cancer right now, right? And Cancer is our family, it's our root system and stuff. And Aries new moon ruled by Mars and closing of chapters in karma and endings of the ways that we've played small and been complicit in relational situations that we don't really want. And I want you to really think about this because I had a couple readings this week with clients where they're settling or playing small because they don't want to rock the boat. And that tells me that their nervous system hasn't learned to hold the capacity for discomfort just yet. That's such a growth opportunity. And that part of the work these last couple years was to step into who you really get to be, because Aries is the identity, it's identity work. It's about going towards your dreams, understanding who you are individually, like I said, so you can be congruent in your relationships. But here's the thing, you guys, if you're not, if you're not honest with yourself, if you're not showing up to the fullest degree that you can within the parameters of your life, then you're going to find eventually that you're going to, sorry about that, that you're going to feel like you're being squeezed and contracted. And I've been there. I've been in both situations where I've been squeezed and contracted and I felt like I was like dying on the vine. And then I've been in situations like I am now where I'm like, wow, I'm really happy. I'm who I want to be. I'm authentic. I'm real. I'm showing up. I'm telling you the truth of my life. I don't have anything to hide. And yet I think so many times we find ourselves in these situations, and I'm going to go back to soul contracts, and I'm going to talk about what I was talking about earlier, where people are overly worried about what their decisions are going to do to impact other people. And then here's the thing. You got to believe in sovereignty. You have to believe that the person, like if it's your spouse or if it's like somebody that you really care about, and you have to, one of the gals, she's not happy in a relationship, she's probably going to leave a relationship. Well, okay, she has to be sovereign and she has to trust her intuitive knowing and not overly go into and get enmeshed in the energetics of the other person and how that's going to impact them and what's this. Because if you do, then it could stop you in your tracks. And then you're going to live a life half lived because you're not honoring your truth. So much of this is having the courage and the willingness to be in integrity with yourself so that you can be in integrity with other people. Because if you're lying to yourself, if you're not happy, then you're creating this huge false illusion of a life, right? I've been there, I've done it. And so I can speak to it so clearly, and it's not fun. And when it comes crashing down, it's challenging, but it's liberating as well. It's freeing you to be the person that you're always meant to be. So I encourage you to get really brave with your heart and think about with this new moon who you're stepping into being. Like, what is your new identity? What have you learned? And if you are going to live your in the fullest integrity of who you are as an individual, what does that look like? And I know, going back to my family example, that those were very small little things that I'm telling you, but I could tell in those moments, I'm like, wow, I've really shifted because I'm not afraid to speak up for myself. I'm not afraid to be in my boundaries. I'm not afraid to tell the truth. And I could see even with my mom when I'm telling her all these stories, how far as a family we've come because I've been able to do the work and I was able to, even though maybe she's dealing with her trauma from her past, I was able to alchemize the trauma that she's passed down so that maybe my daughters don't have to have the same experience that I had. And that's why we do the work. And that's why we go on these journeys to get to know ourselves. So I really encourage you to have an incredible new moon eclipse experience to the degree that you can. And no, there is a lot of uncertainty right now in our lives. There's a lot. I have so many clients talking to me about that and how it's really jarring and all of that. And so I want to remind you the greatest resource you have is to know thyself and to be connected to God. If you're not connected to something higher and bigger than yourself, it's easy for you to get unmoored and feel like you're just drifting and floating. You got to have roots. You got to have roots in God, roots in something that bigger than yourself. Maybe it's not God for you, maybe it's the universe, whatever you want to call it, but you have to have roots in a higher power, higher source energy and realize so much of this is a like a play. It's everything's acting out in your benefit for you to grow. That's why even with our family and the people that we love, they are representations of our learning and growth opportunities. They show us a mirror and they either show us how far we've come or they show us the places that we still need to work on. Like it doesn't really matter. They're going to show you, but it's like trusting that life is always trying to support you and help you out. And even all this stuff that's happening in the world right now, as challenging as it is, it's like, can you trust? and have faith that it's leading to something greater and bigger. We don't all know yet what that is, but it's having that faith. And so I just want to leave you with that because this is a time for like really courageous hearts, big energy, choosing love. And there's such a Piscean component still to all this of like forgiving and accepting and like moving the fuck on. If you're still like held up on something, you're still waiting for mommy and daddy, you're still waiting on that person in your past to like give you that closure that you're needing, like give yourself the closure, be your own best healer in the sense of like giving yourself what you need right now to feel resourced in yourself so you could live your best life. And of course, if you need support, don't hesitate to reach out. I can do a channeling session for you. I call them like a channeled healing session. I have many different ways that you can work with me. And if you like this video, please subscribe to my channel and share it with those that you know would benefit. I hope you have an incredible rest of your day, and I look forward to seeing you guys soon. Take care.